Just a reminder, last orders for popcorn.
talk about some of our thinking, I'm going to choose partners from the bucket and have you you can stand up and find a spot in the room where you would like to have your conversation. Really talk about some of the areas that you highlighted on. Feel free to add on, disagree, agree with what your partners are saying. And we'll take a good 3-4 minutes to have this conversation. There's a lot to this chapter, and I think it's very valuable if we have some time to talk about it. So let's see our partners here, and Jen and Claudia, would you like to be a part of our conversations too, as well with our groups? Then we're going to have Abby and Erica. You're going to be a partner. You can go ahead and find a spot to get started. Paco and Cassie and Claudia are going to be a group of 3. And then we have Jen and Beth.
I know, right? But well, I was watching on the side and I made a line action.
Well, right away, second paragraph, the smart reader has themselves in questions for using the reader's
That's very interesting because I can tell, especially now that I'm giving the ADL 2 test to my students, when I look at their questions, the predictions, I know the students who had they had good predictions are students who actually understood the text. And the students who had asked good questions about the text while they were reading also are the students who are higher readers. So
reading strategies,
yeah, it immediately made sense for me.
And the part that really stuck out to me was on page 13, when they're talking about kind of how the brain, they're discovering how it could be wired for what they need to do. So it had said that it probably constructs circuits which link several quite different parts of the brain, and they're only functional for the people who learn to do them. So if we don't engage them in what we want them to learn, they're not going to make those connections, and then it'll be even harder for them to continue learning. So I think it really shows us how important it is to make sure they're engaged in the strategies and the activities to make sure that they're making those links between listening, speaking, and writing. So it all comes together.
Yeah, and also the challenges for readers, well, for teachers who teach the reading. Number one, the differences between the language from home and I think academic language. Here it says like book language or dialect, and then like the oral language from home. And then the second one, which is more about I think grammar in general, and the one like reading patterns and being able to recognize those visual patterns.
Is oral competency, concept of visual awareness, number one.
And what you were saying, because I know that we have strong leaders, right, and a lot of times they talk about discrepancy.
Are they big message,
So,
kind of going back to what I was saying, reading as far as
the brain
so
also
that just kind of confirms what I already wrote.
focuses for those.
I really liked readers pointed out a couple times in the chapter when in this right hand column, just this whole idea that we have to support them enough. So in the 1, 2, 3rd paragraph, it re-highlighted the part that says the beginning reader must discover for herself. And I just think that sometimes, especially with struggling readers, we think that we have to do more tolls, but it doesn't necessarily have to. We have to teach them how to be problem solvers, and you're doing, I think the more struggling the student is, the more we have to intervene. So I think that it comes up together in this chapter. So I just
Makes a good point because sometimes struggling readers expect to be distracted. And that autopilot doesn't help.
Oh, I suppose that's
I'm thinking of my language yesterday.
Yeah,
They're
that's
using
so
switching or how to transform statement to a question to
And I think that's one of the strengths of what
Saying
we've been
things
doing
that
for the
you
past
notice, and one of
year and a
them
half.
points
Yeah.
out
That we've really
that
been
she didn't name it,
choosing
the way
books
name it,
that
but the
express
subject
what
places in question.
they are,
And that was the
that they might not be able to
point
do
to
yet,
when I
but
was
that they
like,
can understand if we're helping them through it.
Yeah, that's the thing, and you have to know when you have to intervene, when not. But if we're always just doing it for
Identifying
them,
the two things
you know, because
that
we
really
think that
help kids, because a lot of times you see that
we're not
kids
teaching them to
don't know
figure
how
out.
to read from left to right. And the linguists have found that
I like
kids know that to make that analysis
really got
sound.
to
I talked about
So they
So on page
know
13,
how
They look at the word because your
one thing,
eyes
the
have
second
to
paragraph
word
is
right
longer,
in.
when they kids
it's all
want to
about
read
really
it.
brain research and growth mindset.
So
So I
good
like
readers are able
how it was
to,
talking
when they
about how
read, they look at that word ahead
experience
of
and
in front of them, they read it
back
quickly and
that
know that another word is coming to them left to right.
how
So we have to take
the
those
child is
learners
changing
in
every day.
kinder
Which
first,
major
second
needs
grade.
that,
Like parents try not to
that
start
observation
doing
yesterday.
it.
So that experience
What I
really does count, but
they're
they
doing it correctly.
we need
Things like that.
to like show them that it counts.
Kind of confused about directionality.
Made me think of
Be more
parents, like
efficient
what else
in
can we do
Mhm.
to teach our parents how to read
I think,
versus
you know,
what we're doing?
along with that, just those linked pathways that you
Also,
engage the
the last paragraph of that page,
so they can
the
continue growing.
the importance of experience.
Think of that.
We're thinking
So-
they're understanding every day.
That yeah, that for many years was thought that it was like
I'm just
intelligence,
This is how it was in third grade.
and now like no, it's something that students can develop.
Sorry, I don't know third grade Jonathan. I know fourth grade.
It didn't make sense. They
And
put
he's
some of our
different than
efforts
third
they
grade
don't
Jonathan
have.
because he's a whole
Learn
year
those
older.
opportunities. They don't have them.
Now he's upset finally.
So the parents don't have.
Like, I guess that's not the right thing.
jobs. They don't, they don't have those 5
Something else that I'd written down that
They don't have that.
How they
And I think they don't even talk to them in the same way that we do.
do.
So they don't hear that higher level of language discourse.
Put two joint things
unless there's
together.
a-
So as we were talking about page 12.
Synthesis.
Although something
Yeah,
that I've
so, you know,
noticed,
she's like,
especially this year,
The brain wants
is that
to put
I think
things
most of my
together.
students
So we're constantly
uh,
pulling things apart.
are
Kind of like what
using
you were
like
saying.
academic language or at least like a more formal Spanish than their parents. And
Bring information
I know it's
together,
because
so-
all these years, I mean, and it's so interesting because for example, I ask them like, sometimes when we are reading or they're writing, they know that instead of saying
And that's one
pa,
thing I
they
think
say
is kind of a
para.
misnomer is.
And they know the
when they
difference.
say
Same
it,
with
when
their
they say
parents, I'm
people
sure they
are
say
really
pa.
confused with
Me
Me pa
Honestly,
acá.
we
I still
want
do
everybody
it.
I do that
to-
myself.
My sisters or my
It's like that
parents.
Yeah.
weirdness is
They learn how to
what
differentiate
Yeah.
keeps
language
the
at
kids
home and
from
language at
Mhm.
school.
growing.
So
You're saying,
something that's
sorry,
been,
we're
like,
doing A,
for
B,
me,
C,
very
D,
interesting
and we
because
don't
I think
allow them
this-
to take
this,
that little moment in the book to be like, oh,
especially
this is
this
kinda like the
class,
book we read last
is really, really
week, and
high in
make that
Spanish.
connection.
However, in
That
English, they don't have that
servicing
foundation, I don't know.
students.
So, yeah.
That's why that during that ELC time, it's so
Mhm.
important to develop that voice.
Mhm.
I mean, if you remember something, remember it always builds literacy.
Mhm.
Can't have the other before this happens.
Yeah.
Think about when a baby speaks,
Mhm.
learns to speak, they're listening, right?
Mhm.
They can't speak it, but doesn't mean they don't know what
They
you're saying.
understand.
Talking about the word noodles versus
Where do I
noodles.
put 'em?
And how each
Yeah.
seed means something different than we
It's really, yes, it makes a lot of sense when you
Right.
stop and think
There's
about
probably lots of examples like
Mhm.
that, you know,
and where your kids are at and what they need.
meanings and what they know, parents using Spanish, teaching selected English words, probably.
We could have everybody come back. And I'd just like every group to kind of share out on some kind of an areas of something that you had a conversation with your partner before going back, having you share what was some main thing that either you said, your partner said, that would be beneficial for the entire group. Would somebody like to get us started?
Sure, I can start. We talk about how the readers use different, like the high readers use different strategies to get the message of the text that they are reading and how, they manipulate them using the different strategies. Versus the lower readers, they narrow strategies and most of the time they only use one strategy and they stick with it, and it's hard to move them on, especially after the first year that they've been taught. And so I was thinking in back to my mind, what to do to change that behavior that has been there for so long. So they like reading now.
Think of the kids that rely so much on pictures, especially at the lower levels, and that's that one strategy they look at is, but when they start reading higher level text, those pictures disappear and then
Or the picture doesn't relate to the part of the text.
and then they're just,
And I'd like to add that it points out that the more efficient readers are always searching for meaning. They have that understanding that a text is teaching or saying, or they want to get the message from the text. And I think the struggling readers maybe approach reading as I just need to get the right words out to code it. And so those are some of the things that are the reprogramming is they don't enjoy books in the first place because they struggled with that decoding piece, that they don't even care about the meaning of the book anymore.
you want to talk about your observation with your email tools that
Yeah, we were talking that the first page where it says that smarter readers ask themselves the most effective questions. And I was just talking that the last couple of weeks that I've been giving the students CDL2, I noticed right away students who ask themselves like best questions. Right away I know that those students are the students who understood the book. Remember that the first page, the questions that you may have about the text. Or something. And then the students who have the better predictions, obviously are the students who understood the text and are advanced or proficient at that level. So sometimes, obviously I go and I revise everything, but just by the first page I can tell, that's a student who is reading at that specific level.
Paco, you make me think about during the IRAs then, why we spend so much time and think about the questions that we're going to ask ourselves when we model aloud. I'm thinking as a reader, like how we need to be going to that next level with the types of questions we're modeling.
And modeling that during our read alouds, actually that's been a very, very good learning for me, because as I'm reading the book, and then I say, as a reader, I'm thinking that, or I'm wondering if, and students like, oh yeah.
Yeah, and going along with what you were saying, I think that's why we're lower readers, once that we read a book, they want to read it, because now they understand it, they know what are the questions we ask, and reading those higher texts to the whole class, and giving the opportunity to those lower kids to be exposed to the text, and then later they can go back and reread it, just having them that text accessible for them. They really like, when you ask them, what book you're like, I want to read this, can you read it?
Yeah, and then you have students like using a really bad structure, really using the academic language. So talking about segregation and coming up with a sentence that is really, weird, but using the academic language for everything in their writing.
Jen had mentioned how on the second page and the start of the third page, on pages 12 and 13, talking about the brain, she had mentioned that the brain is designed to be making those connections. And I had added that, we talk about if there's linear thinkers or global thinkers. Well, really we want our students to be global thinkers all the time, to be able to read something and then grasp something outside of the text to help them understand it, and then use this strategy and to reread, and we want them to be everywhere, but still follow a linear structure. So kind of allowing them and teaching them those strategies and giving them as much background to access the text and make those connections.
And then we had said, and thankfully we have bilingual learners because the research is clear that the bilingual brain is much more, has those different connections, and students who are bilingual do have the capability, their brains are designed to have that more, less complex thinking and out of the box and things like that.
I think by engaging them in those different domains strengthens those connections even more. So they understand that, oh, I heard this, now I can apply it to something else, or now I can write it because I've heard it so much and I've talked about it.
Anything else anyone would like to add on?
Also, just most important challenges for the teacher of reading. I think it's the second page. It was very interesting because I was reading the 4 challenges. Well, the 4th one I have a question mark because it was very clear to me. But the other challenges are things that bilingual teachers know already from our experiences and the things that we have learned. For example, the first one is the difference between the academic language and the informal or formal language. Register. And it was just interesting for me to see that I don't really know if this book is about biliteracy or bilingual instruction. But I mean, for me, it's clear that seeing them as students, like bilingual students, and they use it, we were saying for
Yeah, to clarify a little bit, the book is it is by Mari Clay. So it was originally made for English-speaking monolingual students. But it was adapted by, like, Kathy Escamilla is one of the authors of it. It was adapted to Spanish-speaking students in particular, so you'll notice, like, the title's in Spanish, and then the text is in English. But and they're working on revising it and making some changes throughout it. But there is work in here with bilingual students talking a little bit more about it. So I thought it would be really is useful for us too, as working with our bilingual students in the way that they think. And you already added on some different things that we know is especially important with our bilingual language. So
Right. I think you bring up a really good point. It just makes me think that this part of the text, the reading process, it doesn't matter what language. So I think that you just bring up a really good point that this is how our bilingual readers and writers develop reading, just the same as a monolingual child would. So I think it's a good point to bring up, because this part of the text clearly is just talking about the reading process in general.
and only reiterates why for our first PD together, we stayed with our monolingual or with our teammates, because when you plan your units, when you're planning your integrated units and you're getting the bulk of the planning done together, it's really because you can, because these things are all the same that really are beneficial for their just how people learn. So it only strengthens, hopefully, what you're thinking about, and when we come together with our grade level teams, that you're really doing these things too, and their students are processing in similar fashions as what our students are processing. So we can even have conversations with our team grade levels, even though it might not be in the same language. They're still thinking and processing and learning in similar ways.
And I don't want to sound pretentious, but I think I don't know if all monolingual teachers know about these things. And for example, talking about background knowledge, building background knowledge. For some monolingual teachers, it's something that really foreign, it's something that they are not used to. When research says that, yeah, it's something that you have to do, you need to expose your students to those experiences. So just,
I think the beauty of our CEDs now, and just looking at PowerPoint that was used with your content leads, that is part of what we're asking teachers to do, all teachers, not just monolingual, bilingual, but to build that background knowledge, because we know that kids, not all kids have that. They just don't have those experiences. So I'm hoping that we're all starting to do that. And I think that you are all fortunate because you're planning and you're having these conversations with your modeling overseas teams.
I think that we can draw a lot of comparisons between language, like our bilingual students and students that come from poverty, because they are essentially language learners as well, because they're lacking that oral language. They don't have those conversations at home. They're not exposed to print and the language of books. So I think there's a lot of comparisons, and just a lot of what we do is best practice for all of our kids because they don't have that background knowledge or that oral language in place.
That's something that we talked about. We talked about the brain pathways in order to engage in literate activities. And we talked about the students who don't have those opportunities at home, who don't have the resources, who aren't engaging in those conversations. And knowing that and knowing that we have kids who aren't reading proficiently, what can we do? And I talked about doing those interactive read-alongs and exposing them to texts that are 2 levels above their grade level because they will learn from that. So.
And we've talked in our grade level about how, I think one of the 2 texts had said, take a field trip at the start of a unit and build those background experiences. And I think it was just something that in the past was just not, maybe it wasn't necessary in such a homogenous society in the past that everyone came to the table with the same experiences. My grandpa's, family, everybody had backgrounds of farming and, 3rd generation, whatever. It wasn't as necessary and pertinent, but now we know some of my students have families working on Los Ranchos, and some of them are building ships, and some of them haven't left Green Bay. So just knowing that our